All right, everyone, we should be ready to begin.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the League of Women Voters of Lee County General Meeting on Coastal Resilience and Climate Change. The League is a nonpartisan political organization that seeks to educate voters on issues and candidates. We never support or oppose candidates, and we never support or oppose issues on which we have not taken consensus and reached an agreement. I would now like to turn over the program to Adrienne Kaltman.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our exciting program with one of the country's leading experts on sea level rise and I am Adrienne Kaltman, Chair of the Lee County League's Committee on Climate Change, member of the League of Women Voters United States Climate Action Team, and a League representative to the United Nations COP23 Conference on Climate in Bonn, Germany. I also serve on the Broward County Climate Change Task Force. As a reminder, all participants will be muted and are asked to keep videos off. Questions and comments may be typed into the chat box. You will have an opportunity to ask questions at the end of the presentation as time allows. A recording of today's program will be posted on our League website. I want to thank Regina Sheridan, Operations Manager of the League of Women Voters of Florida, who was providing the technical expertise to make this virtual presentation possible. Since the late 2000s, the League of the United States has fervently advocated for a coordinated government response to global climate change. The League promotes an environment beneficial to life through the protection and wise management of natural resources in the public interest. The League also supports climate goals and policies that are consistent with the best available climate science and that will ensure a stable climate system for future generations. More recently, the League has expanded our work to focus on climate justice. I am most pleased to introduce Dr. Michael Savarese, Professor of Coastal Resilience and Climate Adaptation at the Water School Department of Marine and Earth Sciences at Florida Gulf Coast University. Dr. Savarese will discuss coastal resilience and climate change preparedness, topics of great importance to all of us who live and work in Florida. Dr. Savarese is the recipient of a great many research project grants, has authored hundreds of papers, reports, and manuscripts, and appeared in quite a few news pieces, radio shows, and videos, including 2 episodes of National Geographic's award-winning documentary series, Years of Living Dangerously. His research concerns the history of coastal environmental and ecological change as a function of climate change and sea level rise, and how this historical perspective can inform management and planning for coastal communities in the future as sea level rise rates accelerate. He has concentrated his efforts in Southwest Florida and in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Most recently, he has become more active as a science to management liaison as communities prepare for the eventualities of climate change. We are happy that he is able to join us here this morning. Welcome, Dr. Savarese.
Thanks, Adrienne. That was a wonderful introduction. And thank you, Sarah and Sandy, Regina, for organizing this. And I want to thank you all for, giving up your Saturday morning you're not at home reading the newspaper or watching cartoons, drinking coffee, snuggled up in front of a fireplace here in chilly Southwest Florida. So thanks for being here. Let me share my screen with you, make sure this works for everybody. Okay, so everybody should see a title slide. There we go. All right. Yeah, so again, thanks for that introduction, Adrian. You made me smile when you talked about the years of living dangerously, National Geographic experience I had. In many ways, that was transformative for me. And in many ways, it was working with that team that kind of set my resolve in maybe shifting from being less of a scientist and more of a community engagement person. So I also want to thank the League in general. I've worked very closely with the Collier chapter of the League. And I got to tell you, partnering with the League has made all the difference in the world in making a difference. Collier's chapter has been instrumental in getting things to move forward, bringing in grant money, changing the mindset of people here. And I look forward to interacting more with the Lee County's chapter as we progress after today. So good morning. So again, I wanted to talk to you about coastal resilience and climate change preparedness in Southwest Florida. As you know, it's one thing to have great information and good science. Doesn't really matter what kind of problem you're addressing it to, but if that science doesn't make its way into capable hands and dedicated hands that are going to use that information, then that information just sits on a shelf and doesn't do any good. So it's critical for these kinds of efforts to move forward at the local as well as national, international levels. I'm going to give you kind of an overview this morning about the kinds of efforts that are going on here in Southwest Florida. Admittedly, there are many more efforts than what I will talk about today. I guess they're efforts that involve me personally, involve the water school, and involve the League in Collier County. And the first thing I'm going to do is showcase two projects that were funded through NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, specifically for Collier County. One is a set of tools for looking at vulnerability to sea level rise and storminess called a COON, and this is what that acronym stands for. And then I'm going to show you a second project that's underway that's here to help Collier County that we're calling a COON Plus, also funded by NOAA. Now, admittedly, these tools are not directly helpful to Lee County. However, they do serve as models or set precedent, if you will, for how Lee County could and should be helped in the future. The third thing I'm going to talk about is I'm going to introduce a new funding effort that's currently under review, Super a COON, sort of a coon with a cape and a mask. And this is an effort that will replicate at least a COON, the work that's been done for Collier County across the entire Southwest Florida region, including Charlotte, Lee, and Collier counties. If this gets funded, then our entire Southwest Florida region will have the same kinds of vulnerability analysis tools to do the planning and mitigation that's needed to deal with problems coming down to us into the future. And that kind of then feeds in with this regionalization effort that's occurring here in Southwest Florida. I've been trying to help move forward with an organization that we're calling the Southwest Florida Regional Resiliency Compact. It's again bringing in those three counties, the 10 municipalities, incorporated cities within those three counties, and NGOs and civic leaders and business groups to come together with a sort of an alliance to address the problems associated with climate change. And Super a COON, if it's funded, kind of goes hand in hand with the compact because the Super a COON then would serve as sort of the first and fundamental tool that the region has to gain an appreciation of what the potential problems are going to be. So that's where I'm hoping to go in the next 30 minutes or so. And so let's move forward. So let me first talk about a COON, this project that was funded by NOAA. I'm using the past tense, it was a 3-year project. It brought about $1 million to Collier County. We're actually in our 4th year. The project is in a no-cost extension year where we're fine-tuning the tools. And those tools are essentially now ready. And they basically provide computer modeling simulations of what the future is going to look like in response to sea level rise. That's what SLR stands for in these slides, and to storms. As you're well aware, our tropical storms are forecast to become more intense, perhaps more frequent. The storms will become stormier as we move forward into the future, and sea level will go up. And when you put a stormier storm on top of a higher sea level, the potential for damage is great. Collier County is, as we speak, as of within the last week, has begun its vulnerability analysis using the tools I'm going to share with you in just a minute. Now, ACOON is really a package of a variety of computer simulations, again, all based on fundamental good science done here in Southwest Florida for our region. There's a lot of weeds here that I don't want to get tangled up in, but suffice it to say, the principal tool is a tool that models inundation by sea level rise. In other words, what kind of nuisance flooding or sunny day flooding are we likely to see as we move forward into the future? And then how is that nuisance flooding likely to be exacerbated when you put storm waves and storm surge on top of it? And the modeling package that's used for that is called CH3D SWAN. It's a very complicated and robust tool and a lot more sophisticated than the kinds of tools to simulate flooding from seawater that you can get off the shelf, the kinds of things that Climate Central or even that NOAA's climate tools provide. So it's a highly sophisticated set of tools. And we can talk a little bit, if there's time allowing, what makes these this inundation modeling program exceptional. There's also an economic impact tool. We're employing FEMA's HAZUS economic model, and we're able to look at how those various scenarios in the future result in property loss, what kinds of property damage would likely occur given future conditions. The CH3D SWAN modeling is actually being used by Collier County now and has been, at least through the last hurricane season, as a rapid forecasting tool. What this SWAN, CH3D SWAN modeling does is it can deal with storms in a statistical sense. So it's able to look at Collier County, and given Collier County's history of tropical storm impacts, it provides a statistically meaningful average, if you will, of what the future storm might look like as we go forward towards 2100. But you can also use that tool with discrete storms. So if you know Irma's coming down the pike and you're 48 hours out and you've got the National Hurricane Center's projected most likely path, the National Hurricane Center can provide a sense as to what kind of storm surge you're likely to expect. Well, ACOON can be employed in a manipulative way, and you can manipulate that storm in advance of its track and see what different scenarios are likely, how they're likely to play out, and give managers more information for contingency emergency planning in advance of a storm. We're very, very excited about that as well. And then the last tool is something called XSpeech. You can see this down here. Everything up till now is really about how the water is going to come over the edge and how it's going to flood the landscape. But it's a simulation given no change in the landscape. And as you know, when a storm on top of sea level rise hits the coast is damaged. Dunes are breached. There's overwash. Sometimes new inlets are produced, like happened with Hurricane Charlie in North Captiva. XSpeech is a tool that allows us to look at the dynamic response of the coast. Where's the erosion likely to occur? Where's the deposition likely to occur? Again, providing other insights about vulnerability for the county and all of its residents and cities. All of this is essentially done on top of asset layers. Large efforts move forward where assets have been collected. Assets are things of value that may be at risk or may be vulnerable. And so it gives managers an opportunity to see how the things of value, how the things that are important, how are they likely to be impacted, allowing prioritizations to be made and allow for adaptive planning and to get implementation projects to improve resilience to move forward. And this is all run with a relatively easy to pick up interface that involves GIS. So it's very geospatially dynamic and interactive. Now, I don't have the ability or I don't have the way to easily show you the tool live. So in a second, I'm going to show you some stills that represent simulation of a couple of the tools anyway, the CH3D SWAN and the FEMA HAZUS results. I should tell you, any effort to do this kind of work requires contextualization. It requires that a community come together and make some serious decisions about what they're after in terms of objectives. And the community has to decide what kind of sea level rise projections they're going to use, because as you probably know, there's a lot of uncertainty about what, how much sea level might go up as we move into the future. And we did that work at the front end with literally hundreds of end users, both from the private and public sector, and taking the best science from NOAA and their sea level rise projections. These are essentially the sea level magnitudes and dates of interest that came to the top. Okay, so the community decided that they wanted to know what 2030, 2060, and 2100 looked like in the future. And then these are, this box of 9 here over to the right, represent the 9 magnitudes of sea level rise that are possible with a low estimate, highest probability of being correct, a medium estimate, and a median probability of being likely, and then a high, the highest range of sea level rise. And you can see you're talking about anywhere from, these are in feet, between 0.4 feet high in 2030 to perhaps as much as over 8 feet in 2100. Managing an 8-foot sea level rise in 2100 and preparing for that is vastly different than preparing for just a fraction of a foot rise a decade or so into the future. You can actually see 2 subtables here. Okay, as Akun progressed through the project period, Akun's first set of estimates were a bit lower, and NOAA kind of refined their estimates in the middle of the project. And so the effort kind of regrouped, and the community decided that these 9 larger magnitudes, which are reliant on better science, were the ones to be chosen instead. So Akun allows vulnerability and computer modeling, but not for every possible sea level rise magnitude, not for every possible date into the future. Such an effort would be too costly and would require massive amounts of computer processing power. So the simulations are all done with these 9 boxes. So there are 9 families of simulations, if you will. So let me show you what some of these things look like. And it occurred to me too late this morning after my first cup of coffee that I'm going to be showing you maps of Collier County. You may not be all that familiar with the geography down here, so I'll do my best to give you a sense of place as we move forward. So you're looking at an image that was captured from Akun. This is kind of the heart of the city of Naples. Here's the Gordon River. Okay, here's Naples Bay. So the great restaurants and galleries where I can't afford to eat or shop sit over here, just to the west. This is the Naples airport, and this is a so-called hotspot of interest. There are a lot of assets in this core. And what you can see here essentially is the airport. You can see the Gordon River coming in from the north, Rock Creek coming in from the east. These are areas that are highly developed, and as it turns out, they're highly vulnerable. What you can see simulated on this map is nuisance flooding, okay, for 2060. So this is what, the high tide nuisance flooding will look like in 2060, assuming the medium sea level rise magnitude for that particular date. And you can see depth of flooding relative to the surface. So the blues represent a foot or so of a nuisance flooding on the landscape, the greens quite a bit more. And you can see in 2060, with that medium sea level rise magnitude, there's some serious problems going on here. Neighborhoods are flooding out on potentially a daily or monthly basis during the highest tides, and parts of the airport are threatened in terms of its usability. So by mapping assets and running these kinds of simulations, managers then can say, well, maybe we better think about how we redevelop this area. Maybe we should think about projects that improve the resilience of the airport, that improve the resilience of these neighborhoods. So that's one example with just nuisance flooding. Okay, here's an example of Akun with sea level rise and storms on top of that, okay? So what you see simulated here is the year 2030 with the low sea level rise magnitude. And this is for the 1% annual exceedance probability storm. In other words, a 1 in 100 year storm magnitude hitting Collier County using the statistical method that Akun has inherent inside of it to sort of estimate on average where that storm is going to make landfall and the kind of impacts it's going to have. And then mapped on top of here are arterial roads. Okay, so this is an asset layer of roads. I've just highlighted the arterial roads. They're here in blue. So these are essentially the emergency evacuation routes that Collier County maintains. And an interesting question that's been posed by some of our user groups is, when can you no longer get people off of Marco Island in an emergency? And you can see here again, coded with inundation depth in greens and blues, those arterial roads. This is Collier Boulevard. And I think this is State Route 82, 92. It's the road that services Goodland and the eastern part of Marco Island. You can see under these conditions, those arterial roads are under threat. Okay, so this is 2030 for a 1% storm with low sea level rise. I'm going to show you the exact same scene now, but in 2060 with a medium sea level rise rate, and again with that 1 in 100-year storm probability. And you can see it gets a whole lot more serious, so much more serious that the viability or the usability of the Tamiami Trail is threatened under these conditions. Again, these are very useful simulations for managers. All right, I'm going to move to the next slide. Oh, sorry, I had a glitch there. It's moved ahead on me. Okay, so if you take the other interesting products that can be shared for all kinds of efforts, one of the project's objectives was to map very carefully what the vegetation looks like around the Collier County landscape, so we now have refined vegetation maps. And any effort to look at resilience in the future requires a very precise representation of topography, or what we call the digital elevation model. And the funding of ACUN has provided the county with this greater refinement of topography that can be used by any effort. It's public, it's available to the public and to all kinds of agencies. The nice thing about the digital elevation model that was crafted is that it did include portions of Lee County. So you can see the Caloosahatchee Basin is in here as well. So there are other added pieces. Let me talk to you really just very briefly about the second NOAA project, ACUN Plus. This is a project that's underway and really is a product of the feedback we got from the end users from the first project. Now, ACUN only considers inundation from storms and sea level rise. It's basically about seawater inundation and has nothing to say about freshwater flooding. ACUN Plus does a whole variety of things, but its biggest value is that it gives Collier County another set of tools to look at freshwater flooding, because with climate change, there's going to be greater precipitation. And if you're interested in the resilience of the interior portions of Collier County, just like the interior portions of Lee County, that's a place that's less likely to be impacted by seawater, but more than likely to be impacted by changes in precipitation. And of course, those are the areas that are of greatest interest for new development in both of our counties. So ACUN Plus does just this. This project is really just getting started. I don't really have any information to share with you. I just wanted to let you know what was going on. I can tell you what makes it truly remarkable is that it integrates a variety of models that look at flooding. So it's coupling the work of ACUN, the CH3D SWAN modeling. It's coupling watershed hydrologic models from the Big Cypress Basin portion of the Water Management District. It's using an urban stormwater hydrodynamic model that's produced in the private sector that seems to be of great value nowadays. And it also involves some ecological modeling. I mentioned before when we looked at the value of wetlands to reducing the damage with respect to Irma, what WARMR does is WARMR looks at where mangroves are likely to go in the future. So we're able to evaluate the resilient services of mangroves in their new distributions as sea level moves them around the landscape. So this provides Collier County with the complete package, okay? It's able to look at its inundation from seawater. It's able to look at its inundation from precipitation. It's able to look at its impacts on the outer coast, the dynamic modeling to see where and how the erosion is occurring. It also has the ability to look at economic impact, and it also has the ability to reconfigure the natural landscape through this warmer piece and to be able to simulate future landscape conditions. So it's kind of mind-blowing information. So, and I think what I'm going to do to preserve some time here is I'm going to skip over the rest of this Cocoon Plus stuff and move forward to, I'm going to just quickly say a few minutes about this. Cocoon Plus has another interesting aspect to it. Because Cocoon Plus has the ability for us to look at how the future landscape is likely to be developed both naturally and artificially through urban development, we can actually do experiments and look at how hypothetical future landscapes might impact resilience as we move into the future. So we brought all the Cocoon Plus users together and we broke them up into two groups, an urban group and a natural systems group. We brought, the best, brightest, and most committed managers within our region, and we've told them, propose for us some restoration scenarios, the kinds of things you'd like to see happen that you think would have great implications for how your resource is managed in the future. And we came up with a series of projects that we could simulate using Cocoon Plus. And we have three flavors of projects. We have blended natural and urban projects. These are projects that use green infrastructure to help improve resilience of urban footprints. We have natural systems projects mostly in the eastern part of Collier County, where there's lots of public natural lands as part of the Western Everglades, but very little, if any, development at all. And then we ask managers to think out of the box. If you had the ability to play God and you could radically change the landscape to deal with seemingly incomprehensible problems as we move into the future, come up with some radical suggestions. And let me show you what came out of those conversations and show you the kinds of simulations that are going to be basically simulated using Cocoon Plus with this fully integrated modeling package. I'm hoping you're all familiar with the East Trail. That's where the Tamiami Trail, makes a left turn and heads across to Miami. By the way, I grew up in New York City, and when I came to Florida in 1996, this is a personal anecdote to make sure you're still awake. When I first came here and I saw that I lived close to the Tamiami Trail, I thought like someone from Brooklyn had created the name Tamiami, and I thought it was I'm going to Miami. I didn't realize Tamiami stood for the road between Tampa and Miami. So I guess I've learned a lot since I moved here. I don't know if anybody's laughing or smiling, but hopefully you thought that was funny and silly. But in any case, the East Trail, again, is where the Miami Trail makes that left turn and travels between Naples and Miami. And it's an area in the eastern part of Collier County that's being heavily developed and redeveloped. And then as you move further out, it's an area that's sort of critical to natural conductivity of fresh water out of the Western Everglades and into the 10,000 Islands area. And there's been this talk about elevating the east part of the trail, very much like the trail is elevated just west of Miami, to improve the flow underneath the trail. So one of the experiments that's going to be modeled here is, what if we raise the elevation of the Tamiami Trail and made it essentially a causeway rather than an impermeable or somewhat impermeable road? I mentioned Clam Bay earlier. I apologize if you're not familiar with this area, but this is an area in the northern part of the city of Naples. It's an area where there are some Clam Bay estuaries with some spit beaches out on the outside, and then a nice little perimeter, if you will, of mangrove forest that should be providing some resilience value to North Naples behind it. The neighborhood of Pelican Bay, for example, sits behind that natural area. So a second experiment that we'll be simulating is what happens if you make Clam Bay go away and you remove the mangroves? What if you stop the effort to restore and preserve the mangroves there? What are the implications? And then this one I love the most. This is a radical project. I'll show you a map of this in a minute. There are some barrier islands that are uninhabited and are natural and are part of Rookery Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve. They're part of what's known as the Cape Romano complex south of Naples. Here is Marco Island, and here are the Cape Romano Island complexes. These are areas that have seen a lot of erosion and are highly dynamic. There's no management efforts here to keep these islands preserved, but we were wondering what kind of value do these islands serve in providing resilience to the communities here on southern Marco Island and a little further to the east where Goodland sits. We just did I say we, the people in University of Florida did a quick, back of the envelope experiment, not a highly sophisticated computer simulation, is what if Hurricane Irma struck this coast with the Cape Romano Islands there and without the Cape Romano Islands there? What if we let the Cape Romano Islands completely disappear into the future, which is likely to happen given the sedimentologic trends? And what you can see here is a coon being run just to look at wave inundation, how waves are likely to flood the coastal margin. And the hotter the color, the higher the waves. And you can see up in here, the southern part of Marco Island, due to Irma, had modestly high waves. Take Cape Romano away, and you can see the wave impact to southern Marco Island is much, much greater. Okay, so this is the kind of thing we're talking about doing, large scale thought experiments, if you will, that might inform management practices as we move forward into the future. All right, it's 5 after 10, and I suspect that most of you are here to learn something about the Southwest Florida Regional Resiliency Compact, so I'll spend the last few minutes talking about this. Like I mentioned before, those tools, the millions of dollars worth of tools that I just described for you are fine, but if they're not used in any thoughtful and coordinated way, it's just a great waste of taxpayer money, frankly. And I would argue that we are not currently regionally coordinated yet, but Collier County as an entity with one jurisdiction with 3 cities inside of it, because of community building, because of a mini alliance, if you will, that's been fostered by many, many groups, including the League of Women Voters, particularly the chapter in Collier, have a better chance of using these vulnerability analysis tools than if these tools were created and that community engagement, community organization aspect didn't occur. So what a regional climate compact does is it brings an entire region to come together as an alliance so that resources can be used more effectively, more efficiently, more talent can come to the table, and things can be done together. And perhaps most importantly, a compact gives a regionalized entity greater competitive edge when it comes to applying for grant money and greater lobbying influence when it comes to leveraging resources coming from the state and the federal government. And so compacts make a whole lot of sense. Our region will be, I'm going to speak in the hopeful future tense, will involve our 3 counties, Collier, Charlotte, and Lee, the 10 municipalities there within, and the Captiva Erosion Prevention District on Captiva Island. And once the compact is ratified, other groups will be invited, NGOs, civic leaders, chambers, those sorts of organizations and groups that have obviously vested interest in resilience. So that's the rationale. Why bring a region together? Well, it makes more sense to focus attention on a problem and focus resources on a region that shares some commonalities, right? I would argue that, cities like Sanibel and Fort Myers Beach and Marco Island share common kinds of problems. And so our 3 counties and the cities inside of them kind of share an environmental setting, a socioeconomic diversity, and demography. So that makes good sense to bring us together. We're all suffering the same kinds of problems. We're all dealing with inundation of freshwater interior lands. We have this montage, this mosaic of developed and natural lands on the coast and along inner bays. We've got these beaches and tidally influence estuaries. And we're worried about climate's exacerbating effects on water quality. So there is a link, albeit indirect, to harmful algal blooms that climate change preparedness can help with. So that makes good sense. We are also diverse when it comes to our social and economic demography. I think it was Adrian at the beginning had said that your league chapter is committed to social justice. You all know how unjust, both socially and environmentally, climate change is. Here on our landscape, we have the poorest of the poor and the wealthiest of the wealthy. And vulnerabilities differ among those populations. And it's also important that this is done in a socially and an environmentally just way. And so we share that as well. We are all mostly small governments. How can a little itty bitty city like Estero, handle the costs given its limited resources? So coming together is a way to share and leverage greater resources. So an alliance makes good sense. Compacts are in vogue now. I believe they're in vogue because there are more than casual hints that resources, at least from the state, are going to not be coming in the future to individual jurisdictions, but to regions. The writing is definitely on the wall. There's pending legislation this year that talks about regionalization. You've probably heard about DeSantis's Resilient Florida bonding package. FEMA has billions of dollars of BRIC money. All of that money, more than likely, is going to be given favorably to places that have regionalized and have their heads on straight and have a plan to use those resources effectively and not squander them. This is an old map showing you the distribution of compacts and collaboratives across the state. And I wish I had an updated one. The Southeast Florida Compact, bringing in these 4 counties and over 120 cities, has been around now for 12 years. They're the grandparent and have been remarkably successful. The Tampa Bay Compact is well underway and doing remarkable things. Sarasota County, which was kind of the monkey in the middle and wasn't interested in joining the compact just a couple of months ago, joined Tampa Bay. Here we are in Southwest Florida. The East Central Compact is now ratified, and they are a large footprint with both coastal and interior counties. You can see there are some heartland counties that are not represented in here, and some coastal counties that will probably join East Central. So we need to look after their interests. When this map was drawn, there was an effort in Duval County where the greater Jacksonville metro area sits to bring a compact together. Well, this green box should now include all of these counties. So there's a Northeast contingent. And I've been working with people from Leon County, where Tallahassee sits. They have a sustainability group. And now the Appalachia Regional Planning Council literally is just starting to get a compact together. And that's going to engage, and I'm assuming it's going to be successful, it will engage a large portion of the Great Bend and this eastern part of the Panhandle. And so everybody's choosing up sides, and we need to get our team together. Just to save time, if you're interested, check out what the Southeast Regional Compact for Climate Change has done. They've done remarkable things. They've got great accomplishments. They are the organization to emulate. Admittedly, we are not them. They have a huge population. Their cities are like our counties on steroids in terms of their staffing and their resources. So it's easy to be envious of what they've done, but it's hard to replicate what they've done given the different magnitudes of populations and investments that they have. Let me just give you a rundown on how the compact is doing. We're doing very well. We've reached out to 14 jurisdictions, 3 counties, 10 cities, and the CEPD, the Captiva Erosion Prevention District. Those entities, as well as NGOs and not-for-profits and other agency folks, have composed a steering committee that had over 50 members. That steering committee has drafted a statement of purpose and a set of objectives. A subcommittee finalized and composed an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, asking those jurisdictions to agree to the concept of having a compact, not who agree to fund a compact, but to sit down and get the business of a collaborative and alliance started. I kind of jumped ahead of my graphic here, but again, because our region has this reticence to join a regionalization effort because of our regional planning council, quite frankly, which hasn't been too effective in recent years, to ask government to cough up money for another regionalization effort that doesn't have some products under its belt, that doesn't have the trust and respectability yet, didn't make good sense. So the plan here is to get this thing started with outside funding, and hopefully in 3 years show our worth. And if we can't find sustainable funding, government is more likely to invest in it. The MOU has been circulated and presented to all jurisdictions now. There are some jurisdictions that are still workshopping the idea, but most of the jurisdictions have brought it up for a vote for ratification. And I can tell you we are 9 for 10. So 10 jurisdictions have brought it up for a vote. There are 4 that are still sitting and waiting. The 9 of the 10 you can see listed here. The only county we have is Charlotte. All cities in Collier County have joined, Everglades City, Marco Island, and Naples. Fort Myers Beach joined just last Monday. I say joined. They signed the MOU agreeing to sit down and start the work. Also in Lee, now as part of the ratifying group is Estero. Am I forgetting somebody? Bonita Springs is our only out in the inning, so to speak. Bonita Springs decided it wasn't a good thing for them, at least at this juncture. And we're still waiting for Collier and Lee, and Cape Coral is on deck. You probably know Cape Coral's mayor just recently passed away. Mayor Coviello was a great outspoken proponent for the compact. I got to know him a little bit through this effort. Seems like a very, very good person in government. I'm sorry he's left us, but so Cape Coral is trying to get over this hiccup and reconstitute its council. And then the only jurisdiction that has gone AWOL is Fort Myers. The city of Fort Myers never even answered a call or had a conversation. So I'm not quite sure, frankly, what's going on there. So that's where we're at. Let me just finish by saying a little bit about where we're going. I'm just going to bring all of this up. The steering committee needs to be reconstituted to better reflect the next phase of people involved. Again, we are already pursuing funding sources for 3 years outside of government. Once that money is secured, we envision an operationalization phase in the first year, where we would bring in a consultant, somebody that has experience doing this kind of stuff, community organizing with resiliency in mind, and have that person be the facilitator for developing an administrative and governance structure. We have some ideas of what that governance structure might look like. And then we don't want an officer, we don't want a boss, but we want a coordinator, someone who can carry this effort, that has experience with urban resilience planning, to be the facilitator or the coordinator of the group, and be the person that has the experience, the skills, and the passion to help direct staff across the jurisdictions, because our staffs, again, tend to be small and their hands are full. They've got a lot on their plates. FGCU's water school is willing and able to provide space in our new building, which opens in January of next year, which is going to be a great showcase for all things involving water for Southwest Florida. and we're able to provide an operational budget to help do the daily work. And then what happens if we're lucky to get 3 years of funding and no more than 3 years of funding and it's not sustainable? Hopefully then the compact has done enough good work and has the trust and respectability of the region that people will be willingly, investing in its operation. So I think, my league friends, I'm done. And this is a not so stormy storm off of the coast of the little island of San Salvador in the Bahamas. My other great love and my great worry when it comes to coastal resilience is in the Bahamas. Really a third world country that is only a few inches above sea level and has no place to go in a changing world. Here in Florida, we have more options. So thank you.
Thank you very informative, and
oh, there you go.
we're looking forward to working with you in the future.
Yeah.
I'd like to address some of the questions that have been posted in the chat session
Sure.
right now. We have a great many excellent questions, and I'm going to ask for Sandy to help with those questions. The first question that goes back a bit is from Scott Lewis, and he asks, when this mapping such as annualized property costs becomes public, what will insurance companies and real estate people be doing and saying?
Oh boy, that's a great question, right? And I think that's the it's that reaction that everybody's worried about. Was it Scott that asked this? Scott, I'm a people person, but I'm not a government person. I'm not, I've never held an office, and I'm not sure how you best facilitate or engage the public or the housing industry in this kind of a problem. So it's done in an effective way and isn't done in a knee-jerk reaction way. And so I don't know what the answer is, and I wished I did. I would hope that the compact has as part of its central mission. What I can say is, I can tell you the Southeast Florida Compact, the one mistake that they made, and it's a mistake that they admit to this day, is when they started their compact, they didn't have the business community involved. They didn't have the real estate community involved. It was viewed more as a governmental infrastructural kind of an enterprise. And they wished if they could replay their history, they brought in the business community from the onset, particularly because of these kinds of implications for the housing market, how insurance is affected, how the mortgage industry is affected, and so on. And so at the very least, we are aware of that omission in Southeast Compact's history, and I'm expecting that we don't make that same mistake.
Thank you so much. We have a question from Julie Wade. How do the numbers equate to costs?
I don't think I understand.
I
How
think
do the
she's
numbers
referring to early on some of the slides.
Okay, is it the
equate to costs?
Okay, so
That was from
okay, so
slides.
it must have been that annualized property loss slide. So in each of those little colored polygons, I think I'm not going to go back and share the screen, but I'm going to go back on my computer and look at the slide so that I speak correctly. The one slide that I showed was 2060 with a 1.7 foot sea level rise with a 1 in 100-year storm impacting the coast. And if you colored green, okay, your percent annualized cost of your property damage would be 25%. So that means, you know, every year you would sustain 25% of the value of your property in terms of rebuilding or restoring what was there. Okay, and so in the polygons that were redder colors, there are colors in orange here where the annualized cost is at 60%. In which case, you know, if you happen to be living in that particular portion of the landscape in 2060 with a 1.7 foot sea level rise and that 1% storm, you know, impacted us, you would be incurring a 60% cost of your property value every year. So it doesn't, we know through the modeling what the property values are, but because property values differ across the landscape, and because we are dealing with these little regional areas, these polygons, we're providing the property loss as a percentage, an annual percent loss, rather than a dollar amount. Because if you own you know, a multi-million-dollar condominium in that polygon, the 60% loss on your property in terms of monetary cost is much higher than if you just have a you know, a small single-family home on that same piece of real estate. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. We have a question from Sandy Frank. What are the action steps to get Lee County involved? What is the role for League of Lee County, and how do we implement this?
Lee County and Collier County have been reticent. I'm just going to throw it out there. They have been reticent to join. And I'm seeing reticence at two levels. I'm seeing reticence at the staff level, you know, the county managerial level and the senior managerial staff people, and reticence at the Board of Commissioners level. I thought up until a few days ago that reticence was strong in Lee County, but overcomable, if that's a word, in Collier County. And today, on this Saturday, I feel differently. There's reticence in Collier County as well. And so this question is coming to me at a time of transformation. I'm trying to rethink strategies now. And I don't know if this is what's going to happen, but I believe this is the path we're going to take. And that is, we're just going to get started. We're going to bring everybody to the table. You know, there are 9, 1 county and 8 cities that have said yes, and we have to honor that commitment. And the compact was never intended to be an interlocal, in the sunshine operation. It was meant to start out as a looser work group environment that would never have any decision-making authority, but would provide useful information and help guide local government within the region. And what I'm hearing from Lee and Collier County, at least from the managerial staff side, is they want more time for this to play out. They want more time to build trust and so on. And I think the only way to do that, to honor that, if that's a legitimate criticism and it's not just an excuse for some other reason, I think the best way to honor that is to move forward and build that trust and respect by getting started. And so all 14 jurisdictions, whether they join or not, or have ratified, I got to get away from the word join. If they've, you know, agreed to the concept, whether they've agreed or not, they're welcome to the table and should be part of the conversation. And I got to believe that once the process moves forward, and if these, at the state level, if these needs to be regionalized become reality, if for no other reason, just to have resources come to Southwest Florida, then they're going to have to participate. So they wouldn't be excluded, they would still be invited. And I suppose assuming that's the path we take, and I should know more in a couple of weeks, then I think the way groups like the League can get involved is to encourage them to participate in these first stages, if you will. So they're not just sitting at home. I mean, if you are being genuine and you think this is a good idea, but you need to be convinced more that it's a good idea, then you need to sit down and experience it and not just sit on the sideline and let 2 or 3 more years go by and have opportunities pass you by. So I think one way the League can help, and this is a way that the League has helped in Collier County deal with its mini alliance, Collier moving forward with NOAA funding, has helped in the past, is by helping encourage government and informing the public. There's nothing wrong with reaching out to city council members, town council members, to commissioners, and express the League's commitment or advocacy, if you will, for a compact. And in some ways, Lee County, it's sort of like the youngest child in a household. Poor Lee. Collier County's got all these resources that have come to it, and Lee County hasn't. In some ways, Charlotte County being the smallest county, and because of its stronger environmental ethic, because the NEP is there, and because Charlie, destroyed Punta Gorda, they as a smaller community have been doing resilience work quite effectively. And it's Lee County who's the one that seems to be behind in the times, so to speak. So, I see Sally Wolliver on this call. I don't know if there are other Collier League members on this call, but it might be worth having an interleague chapter conversation about how to handle this. That I'd welcome that.
Sounds like some really, really great ideas, and we will certainly move forward and see what we can do to help with this. Patricia Sala, one of our board members, asks if there is a similar analysis as the one that you presented of Lee County underway.
The state, DEP, just released its SLIP software, and the SL in SLIP stands for sea level. So the state is making available and is proposing as sort of a normalizing tool for the entire state as a way of looking at the inundation effects of sea level rise. I don't know where that is in terms of legislation. I don't, one of the legislative committees actually gave a presentation for SLIP back on Thursday. I think you can pick it up on the Florida channel. I haven't had a chance to really figure out what SLIP does and how sophisticated SLIP might be. My guess is that SLIP, it's not a guess, it most certainly isn't as sophisticated as what you're seeing with a coon. And it's perhaps what's sometimes referred to as a bathtub model. So you have a topography of the landscape, right? So Lee County, Fort Myers, has a topography. If you raise sea level 2 feet, anything that's 2 feet above sea level or lower goes underwater with a bathtub model. And so that's just a simple matter of just increasing the volume of the bathtub and pouring that water over a topographic map in a computer simulation. There's nothing very sophisticated about that. One, it doesn't include storms, and 2, it doesn't take into account the attenuating character of the landscape. Water just doesn't move over the landscape when the bathtub fills up with an additional 2 feet. It's not that simple. But it's still a usable tool to get sort of a first cut on where the vulnerable areas will be as sea level rises in the future. So I'll know more about what SLIP does, hopefully within a week's time. I'm hoping it's more sophisticated than that. If there's anybody on this call that knows more about it and can share, please do. There are other bathtub models that you can take right off of a website, and you can, open up your neighborhood and raise sea level by a foot or two. The topographies, the digital elevation models that underpin those simulations, though, are also not very accurate. They're very coarse. So what Lee County would need, and maybe SLIP provides, is a more precise elevation model. So you know more accurately what your topography is as the bathtub fills. Now this super raccoon, did I talk about super raccoon? I mentioned it at the beginning, but I kind of blew over it in the talk. I apologize. So one aspect of, and the whole reason for bringing up Akoon and Akoon Plus was to let you know that Akoon's tools will hopefully be coming to the entire Southwest Florida region. There is a huge project, over $2 million, under review now. We'll know in April. And that project basically replicates Akoon for the entire region. If that is funded, Patty, I don't know who asked this question. If that's funded, then Lee County, Charlotte County, Fort Myers Beach, Estero, all the communities across our 3 counties will have the same robust and highly sophisticated inundation tools. The problem with that is it's a grant proposal, and grant proposals, it's like trying to win a Powerball lottery sometimes. Who knows if it'll get funded or not. And then Akoon, Super Akoon will take time, even if it's funded. So best case scenario, the proposal gets funded in April. In 3 years, 2 or 3 years, Lee County would have, and Charlotte County would have, the same kinds of seawater inundation tools that Collier already has. So I apologize for having skipped over that in the talk, but.
Well, thank you. And thank you for sharing that update with us. We have another question here from Jill Pelstring. Lee County School District has purchased wetlands in Estero to build a middle school that was originally slated to be built on previously purchased non-wetland property. Apparently, the bad decision was a politically motivated one to please Estero City. How does anyone fight that nonsensical decision making?
Oh, that's a good question. And really, it's that kind of a situation that these vulnerability tools are really all about. So if Lee County and the town of Estero had these vulnerability tools available to them, and they approached this development question honestly and vigorously, they would have run a simulation and shown that in 2030, under these conditions, this site in Estero is likely to be impacted by nuisance flooding, or likely to be annihilated by future sea level rise when a storm happens to come by with just the wrong path for that school. And it would have hopefully informed the decision where to place that school, where to footprint that school. Collier County, bless its heart, has as one of its asset layers the distribution of all its existing schools, and has on its asset map the site for future development of schools. There's at least 2 potential high school localities on this map. And although Akoon hasn't been used yet formally by education people, through a workshop that was facilitated, ironically, Sally, I know you're still there, by the league, we ran a workshop that involved education people, and we looked at the impact on the current and future locations of schools. So I don't know where this is. I guess it was Jim who asked that question. I'm reading the chat. I don't know where this is specifically in Estero. It's possible that this and more than likely that this is a freshwater wetland and may not be a wetland that's likely to be tidally affected, but maybe a wetland that's more likely to be vulnerable due to freshwater flooding. So that's why this integrated tool, both the freshwater and the seawater vulnerability coming together, is so helpful. You know, I see this as an estero problem. Probably the city that's been most outspoken for spreading the gospel of the compact has been Estero. And is it Ribble, Mayor Ribble? Is William Ribble, Bill Ribble, the mayor of the town of Estero? I think so. I hope so. Anyway, at his town council's compact workshop, he invited county commissioners from Lee. He invited Ray Sandelli. He invited Kevin Ruane, who at the time hadn't been elected yet to the Lee board, but was still involved with Sanibel as their mayor. He also invited Ray Murphy, the mayor of Fort Myers Beach, and you know, the irony is that Estero has been carrying the word, and I would argue that Estero had a formative effect on Fort Myers Beach through the connection between their two mayors. So I'm not familiar with what happened there. Maybe this happened a long time ago. Maybe it happened under a previous administration, but at least for the time being, maybe Estero's town government is in a better mindset for dealing with these kinds of things.
Well, we have lots of questions here and we'll try to answer them. For those that we can't get to, we will get back to you after this presentation is over. So I'm just going to jump ahead and see if I can pick out some right now. Lots of comments. And
I saw this South Florida Water Management District. Let me just quickly say this is Kimberly. I just wanted to let Kimberly know that the South Florida Water Management District has been at the table, has been a member of the steering committee. The Water Management District now has a chief resiliency officer who's been involved in this and has been helping leverage interest. So the district is involved in the Super Accoon project and in the two Accoon projects in Collier. South Florida Water Management District is involved as principal investigators. So the district is all about this.
we have a question from Salemi Hernandez. How can we members of the community help getting places like Lee County and Bonita Springs to join the compact? I think you've touched on some of those points, but
yeah, hi Salemi.
If there's anything you want to add, this is your opportunity.
You know what somebody needs to do? Somebody needs to go figure out what's happening in Bonita Springs. They apparently had an aggressive and a very uncooperative council, but I believe that's changed. Senator Ray Rodriguez and I presented at the Bonita Springs Town Council meeting, and Ray Rodriguez is one of the senators that has, I believe, drafted a bill in the Senate for regionalization, and it was just strange. They just reacted so poorly. It was almost as if their decision was more about fighting amongst themselves than it was about helping the community. So Salemi, you know, if you've got people, or if the league has, you know, people that live in Bonita Springs, if you can just get a sense or take the temperature of their city council now that they have a new mayor and some seats have been turned over, that would be helpful.
There's a comment from Kimberly Shunk. The compact will probably have to operate under Florida sunshine laws, especially if you end up with elected officials who will be automatically required to follow those regulations. Can you comment on that?
Yeah. it's interesting. The Southeast Florida Compact evolved in its structure. It began as a loosely aggregated work group that operated for 8 or 9 years out of the sunshine. They recently changed their organizational structure. It was less about having decision-making authority, but more about how tax dollars were going to be allocated. And when they started getting into decisions about moving public money around, they were advised by their council that they should become whatever that designated organization is that makes you operate under the sunshine. And since then, it's been like they've been, shackled. Every decision becomes complicated. Every communication becomes complicated. So Kimberly, the intention is to operate in a less formal way and out of the sunshine, knowing full well that this group doesn't have any governmental decision-making authority, at least through its initial stages. It's more about identifying problems, getting resources into the right hands, sharing knowledge, cooperatively planning, but independently implementing projects. So you can cooperatively plan, and if you're not cooperatively implementing, then you're not spending, public money across interjurisdictionally. And so that's how it sounds like, everybody tries to avoid the sunshine, and the sunshine's supposed to protect the public. And I'm not advocating for, the lack of full disclosure. But I think that makes the most sense. And the way we're likely to be structured is there will be sort of an advisory capacity within the compact that will inform councils and boards of commissioners, so that there's never two council members or two commissioners representing the same jurisdiction in the room at the same time. So that's the expectation. It may be that the group decides to operate differently, and maybe the group decides they want to be an interlocal in the sunshine enterprise from the very onset, but I think that's highly unlikely.
Well, thank you so much. I will take one more question here. I see Lynn Longmire has asked a few questions about Fort Myers. She says Fort Myers didn't ratify, but Fort Myers Beach did. I believe that's a question. And she asks, who do we contact in Fort Myers to ask for their reason for not ratifying?
Don't know. Randy Henderson, is he the former mayor of Fort Myers?
Well,
Randy Henderson ran for District 19 seat, right? Did he? I don't think
Kevin Anderson is the current mayor. Kevin Anderson. Kevin
Anderson,
the current mayor.
Okay, so Randy Henderson, right? He's the former mayor. I'm remembering that correctly, Sandy?
Yes.
Okay, so Randy was actually supportive. This was before he announced his bid for the District 19 seat, and I actually gave a presentation to their council, their city council, and I didn't get any negative feedback, or I didn't get any sense that they were opposing this. And then weird things happened, and I know, Sandy, is it their city manager that's been having trouble? In any case, I don't know. My contact was the city manager, and it just seems like they're never answering their phones, they're never answering their emails, and I just felt like I was wasting time. So I'm not sure who asked this question, but if you've got some advice, or if the league wants to reach out to Fort Myers, that would be great. I would certainly encourage you to.
So this is Sandy. I'm thinking that we probably should look at a message, as some of the other participants had requested, and reach out to the city council and the mayor and the city manager once we have a concept of how the league is moving forward. That's
okay.
Individuals could reach out to council members and the mayor and the manager at this point.
I see some other things here about growing climate solutions, path to positive. They're very much involved in this. In fact, I think growing climate solutions might be a likely close partner with the operationalization of this compact without assuming Lee and Collier County don't come on board and, we just start, but we don't have the ability to ask for big outside money, because why would anybody provide money when the two main counties are not on board? So growing climate solutions has been involved in that. I also, Audubon, Florida has been heavily involved. In fact, I saw someone on here made some comment about, can the league provide packages of information? That would be fantastic. Audubon, Florida has prepared such a thing. If you go to Growing Climate Solutions, they actually recruited Climate Reality, one of their writers, and that person wrote a number of essays, sort of compelling arguments for, why cooperating is important. You might have a look at that. If you go to Growing Climate Solutions' website, they're linked there. So Audubon, Florida, Growing Climate Solutions have really good briefing information. Having briefing information from a league, I think, maybe carries greater weight, because Growing Climate Solutions is sort of inherently nestled within the Conservancy of Southwest Florida, and Audubon, Florida is, they're environmental conservation groups, and the league, given its nonpartisan, all-embracing mission, would perhaps be taken more seriously by people in government.
Thank you, Dr. Savarese, and thank you everyone for those wonderful questions and comments, and for my colleagues for their help. We are very grateful that you took the time to be here with us today. I
got to tell you, this is actually better than Saturday morning cartoons.
We're glad to hear it. Hope you'll come back again. I would just like to mention our get well wishes to our president, Clara Ann Graham, who wishes she could be, I know she's here today, but I know she wishes she could have participated a little more, but she's recovering from COVID, and we wish her a continued speedy recovery. And now I would like to turn the microphone over to our secretary, Sandy Frank, to take a minute to tell us some things about our league programs and future events, which I'm sure will include more on the formation of a Southwest Florida Regional Compact. And that will be followed by closing remarks from our Vice President, Sarah. Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Dr. Savarese and all the participants for the great questions. We certainly have a lot of work to do in the future, and I think we have a good roadmap for how we can do this collaboratively with community organizations and other leagues and Dr. Savarese and the elected officials. The league has additional educational events, social justice and education. We are looking at juvenile justice issues, the cost of school policing, and the Lee County programs and resources for students in this area and youth. On March 15th, we have a collaborative event with Florida Gulf Coast University, 100 Years of Women's Suffrage and Today's Challenges. The speaker is Jamie Abrams, a professor of law at University of Louisville. This is a long-awaited event that we had postponed the in-person event from last August, and now we'll be having it virtually on March 15th. And then again on April 3rd, we will have another program event on environmental issues. I urge all of you to join the league, sign up for our email updates. You can do that through our website, lwvlee.org, and also at the state and national level. And of course, we would love for all of you who are not currently league members to become members so you can work with us on climate and other important issues. So again, thank you to Dr. Savarese and our speakers, our participants.
I would just like to add on behalf of our president, Clara Ann Graham, that we hope all of you who are not members, come and join us. Look at it this way, for the next few months, you can attend all of our meetings in your jammies. Isn't that wonderful? You can find membership information on the website at lwvlee.org. Thanks to everyone this morning.